You have been lied to, not by gurus, not by self-help, by yourself. Every time you told yourself you need to find your purpose, every time you felt guilty for not being passionate enough, every time you looked at someone who seems to love their life and wondered what is wrong with you. That voice, the one that says your life should mean something. Camus said that voice is the problem, not the solution. Albert Camus wrote The Myth of Sisyphus in 1942. France was occupied by Nazis. He was in exile. His publisher had been shut down. And in the middle of all that, he sat down and wrote a book that begins with one of the most famous opening lines in philosophy. Quote, "There is only one really serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy." Most people hear that and think Camus was depressed. He was not. He was honest. And what he concluded, after 120 pages of the tightest philosophical reasoning you will ever read, was not that life is meaningless. It was something much more dangerous, something that, once you actually understand it, will either break you or set you free. And the version of it that YouTube typically gives you is wrong. Today, we are going to fix that. If you have watched other videos about Camus, you have probably heard something like this. Camus said life is absurd. The universe does not care about you, so you should just enjoy your coffee and live in the moment. That is not what he said. That is Instagram Camus, aesthetic Camus, black and white photo with a cigarette Camus, and it misses the entire point in a way that actually makes the philosophy useless. Here is what Camus actually said. And I need you to sit with this because it is uncomfortable. The absurd is not just that the universe has no meaning. The absurd is the conflict between two things that are both true. One, humans desperately need meaning. We cannot function without it. We need to know that our suffering has purpose, that our work matters, that our existence is not a cosmic accident. Two, the universe provides absolutely no evidence that any meaning exists. This is different from what most people think absurdism means. Absurdism is not nihilism. Nihilism says there is no meaning, and that is the end of the conversation. Absurdism says, I want meaning, I demand it, I reach for it constantly, and the universe says nothing back. The absurd is that relationship, the reaching and the silence happening at the same time. Camus called it the divorce between the mind that desires and the world that disappoints. And here is where it gets personal. Camus said there are exactly 3 ways to respond to the absurd. 3 things a person can do when they realize their need for meaning will never be satisfied by the universe. Option 1. Physical suicide. He rejects this immediately. It eliminates the problem by eliminating the person asking the question. It does not solve the absurd. It just removes one half of it. Camus calls this a confession that life is too much for you. He is not moralizing. He is saying it is logically inconsistent. You cannot defeat the absurd by destroying one half of the equation. That is not a victory, that is surrender. Option 2 is what Camus calls philosophical suicide. And this is the one that catches almost everyone. Philosophical suicide is when you solve the absurd by pretending it does not exist. You invent a meaning. You adopt a religion. You subscribe to an ideology. You tell yourself that your suffering is part of a grand plan. You leap, Camus explicitly uses the word leap, into a belief system that gives you the meaning the universe will not provide. Kierkegaard did this. He looked the absurd in the face and then leaped into faith. Camus respected Kierkegaard enormously, but he said, "No, that is still surrender. You have killed your honesty to save your comfort." So if option 1 destroys the self and option 2 destroys the truth, what is left? Option 3. And this is where Camus goes somewhere no philosopher before him had gone. He calls it revolt, not revolution. Revolt, a constant, ongoing internal rebellion. You accept the absurd fully. You do not try to escape it. You do not try to resolve it. You live inside the tension. You stare at the meaninglessness of the universe and you say, I am going to live anyway. Not because there is a reason, because I choose to. Let me say that again, because it is the most important sentence in this entire video. Camus does not offer you meaning. He offers you freedom from the need for meaning. The problem was never that life is meaningless. The problem was that you demanded it to be meaningful. Once you stop demanding, once you accept the silence, you are free. Not free to do whatever you want. Free from the exhausting, crushing, burnout-inducing obligation to find a purpose that the universe was never going to give you. Now we get to the part everyone has heard. Sisyphus. The myth. But here is what the YouTube summaries leave out, and it changes everything. Sisyphus was not just some guy pushing a rock. In the original Greek myth, Sisyphus was the king of Corinth. He was brilliant, and he was arrogant. He tricked the gods multiple times. He chained up Thanatos, the god of death, so that no one on earth could die. When the gods finally caught him, they devised the perfect punishment. Not torture, not fire, something worse. They condemned Sisyphus to push a massive boulder up a mountain, and every time he reached the top, every single time, the boulder would roll back down, and he would have to start again forever. Now, most people hear this myth and think, that is the worst punishment imaginable. Futility, pointless effort, the grind forever with no reward. And that is exactly what the gods thought too. But Camus looked at this myth and saw something completely different, something the gods themselves did not understand. Camus asks, when does Sisyphus suffer the most? It is not while he is pushing, it is the moment at the top, the moment he watches the boulder roll back down, and then the walk back down the mountain. That descent, that is where the tragedy lives, because in that moment, Sisyphus has nothing to do but think. He thinks about his life, his punishment, the eternity of this task stretching before him. And this, Camus says, is exactly what modern life feels like. You work, you come home, you sleep, you work again. The same tasks, the same commute, the same emails, the same Sunday evening dread, days passing into years, and in the quiet moments, the walk to your car after work, the minutes before you fall asleep, you think about it. That recognition that your life is, in its structure, not that different from Sisyphus pushing a rock, that is the absurd becoming personal. That is the moment most people either distract themselves or despair. But Camus says there is a third option. And this is the line that changes everything. Quote, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because Sisyphus knows exactly what his life is. There is no illusion, no false hope, no self-deception. He knows the rock will roll back down, and he pushes anyway. That is not resignation. That is the purest form of rebellion that exists. You are thinking, okay, Sisyphus is happy. Beautiful metaphor. But I have bills, I have a boss, I have a body that gets tired. I cannot just decide to be happy pushing my rock. And you are right, but not for the reason you think. The obstacle is not that your life is hard. It is that you are still expecting it not to be. You are still negotiating with the universe. You are still hoping that if you work hard enough, suffer enough, optimize enough, meaning will show up. Camus would say, that hope is the thing that is burning you out, not the work, the hope. Burnout is not caused by working too hard. It is caused by working hard for a meaning that never arrives. You grind, you optimize. You wake up at 5 a.m., you track your habits, you do the deep work, and underneath all of it is an unspoken bargain. If I do all of this, my life will finally mean something. And then it does not, and you crash. Camus saw this coming 80 years ago. The absurd person, the person who has accepted the silence of the universe, does not burn out, not because they work less hard, because they have stopped demanding that their work justify their existence. Here is the practical shift. When you wake up tomorrow, you have two options. Option A, you do your work hoping it will make your life matter. Every task carries the weight of existential significance. Every failure is not just a failure. It is evidence that you are failing at life. Every criticism feels like a verdict on your worth. This is exhausting. This is what leads to burnout, anxiety, and the Sunday evening dread. Option B, you do your work because you choose to. You push the rock because pushing the rock is what you do. The result means nothing for your cosmic significance. Your worth is not on the line. You are just a person doing a thing. This is not giving up. This is not becoming passive. Camus was a member of the French resistance. He risked his life fighting Nazis. He edited an underground newspaper. He did not sit in a cafe shrug and say, nothing matters, so why bother? He said, nothing matters, so I am free to choose what I fight for. The absurd does not lead to apathy, it leads to intensity. If there is no cosmic meaning, then the only meaning that exists is the meaning you create in this moment. So create it fully. Not because you have to, because you can. Camus' word for this is revolt, not a one-time revolution. A daily, ongoing, moment-by-moment decision to engage with life fully while knowing it has no ultimate purpose. He writes, what is a rebel? A man who says no, but if he says no, he does not give up. He is also a man who says yes from his first movement onward. No to the demand that the universe provide meaning, Yes to the life that is actually in front of him. Let me make this concrete. You open Instagram. You see someone who quit their job to travel. Someone who built a 7-figure business. Someone who is in better shape than you, happier than you, more successful than you. And something tightens in your chest. You feel behind. You feel like your life is not enough. Here is what is actually happening in that moment. You are demanding that your life have a certain shape, a certain trajectory, a certain visible meaning. And the universe, in the form of your Instagram feed, is showing you that other people seem to have found that meaning. They have not. They are showing you the top of the mountain. They are not showing you the rock rolling back down. The absurd response to comparison is not to try harder to catch up. It is to see the comparison itself as the trap. You are comparing your unedited life to their edited one. You are measuring your full experience of the absurd against their highlight reel. Of course, you feel inadequate. You are playing a game that cannot be won. Camus would say, stop playing, not by deleting Instagram, by changing what the images mean to you when you see them. They are not evidence of your failure. They are evidence that other humans are also pushing their rocks, and they have chosen in that moment to photograph the view. Let me go deeper. The grind set, the rise and grind, the hustle culture. Embrace the grind. You have heard all of this, and there is a version of this that Camus would respect, and there is a version he would see as poison. The poison version says, grind because one day it will pay off. Grind because your suffering now will be redeemed by success later. This is the same trap. You are making a bargain with a universe that does not negotiate. You are saying, I will suffer now in exchange for meaning later. And when the meaning does not arrive, because it never does, you will have nothing but the suffering. The Camus version of the grind is completely different. It says, grind because the grind itself is the point, not the outcome. The act of pushing the rock, the discipline, the effort, the engagement with your craft, that is the meaning. There is no meaning waiting at the top of the mountain. The meaning is the mountain. This changes everything about how you work. You stop doing things to become someone. You do things because doing them is what it means to be alive. The pressure evaporates. The burnout mechanism, the gap between your effort and the meaning you expected to receive, closes entirely. And here is the strangest part. When you stop demanding that your life means something, when you stop searching for purpose and start engaging with what is actually in front of you, meaning tends to find you anyway. Not because the universe changed its mind, because you stopped looking past your actual life and started living it. I am going to give you 3 practices, concrete things you can do starting tomorrow morning. 1. The morning acknowledgement. Before you check your phone, before you do anything, sit for 30 seconds and say to yourself, the universe owes me nothing, no meaning, no purpose, no cosmic justification for my existence. And then say, and I'm going to live fully today anyway, not despite the silence, because of it. 2. The midday check. When you feel that tightening, the stress, the comparison, the feeling of falling behind, pause and ask, am I demanding meaning from this moment? Am I expecting this task, this conversation, this day to justify my existence? If the answer is yes, remind yourself, the rock is the point, not the top of the mountain. Your worth is not on the line. You are just a person doing a thing. Then return to the thing. You will find it is lighter now. 3. The evening revolt. Before you sleep, identify one moment from the day when you were fully present, not performing, not optimizing, not reaching for meaning. Just present. A conversation, a meal, a walk, a task you got absorbed in. That moment, that exact moment, was your revolt against the absurd. You were not searching, you were living. The absurd wants you to despair, and you, in that moment, refused. That is the victory, the only victory that matters. Camus died in a car crash in 1960. He was 46 years old. He had a train ticket in his pocket. His publisher had convinced him to drive instead. In the wreckage, they found the unfinished manuscript of his final novel, and in his briefcase, an unused train ticket. There is something terribly absurd about this. The philosopher who wrote that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, who built an entire philosophy around accepting the randomness and silence of the universe, was killed by that exact randomness. But Camus would not want you to be sad about this. He would want you to notice something. That train ticket, the one he did not use, represents every path not taken, every alternate life you could have lived. And Camus would say, it does not matter. What matters is the path you are on, the rock you are pushing, The life you are actually living right now in this moment, with all its imperfections and silences and unanswered questions. This is the absurd, and this is your freedom. Now, here's the thing. Camus gave us one answer, a powerful one, but there is another philosopher, a man who was Camus' friend and then his enemy, a man who looked at the exact same problem, the problem of meaning in a meaningless universe, and came to a conclusion so different it tore their friendship apart. Jean-Paul Sartre, existentialism, and the question Sartre asked that Camus could never answer. That is next time on Mindscape Philosophy. Subscribe so you do not miss it. This is Mindscape Philosophy. Tomorrow morning, 30 seconds. The universe owes you nothing, and you are going to live anyway. See you next week.